Hello and welcome to another video on macros for editors. A slightly unusual one this time, which comes out of some deep and meaningful thinking I've been doing recently as I approach the age of 70 about my own future and about the future of macros. So, assuming you're watching this because you're thinking that macros for editors are a good thing, how can we best promote their use is partly what I'm thinking about. And how can I help? And how can you help? So, another point is, what are the obstacles to the future of macros? What are the limitations? So to try and frame this, I want to give you a bit of background about myself. So I've got a brief history of Paul Beverley. 1980 to 84, I was a lecturer in Further Education College in Norwich in the UK, and in my spare time I was writing articles about the BBC microcomputer, and it had a word processor called WordWise Plus, which after the first couple of years was provided with a BASIC-like language so that we could manipulate text much more easily than in the normal BASIC programming language. And that meant that in about 1982 I started writing computer programs to edit text. Anyway, from 84 to 87 I ran my own business, having left the Further Education College, and I was actually selling programs written in the WordWise Plus language, which was fine, but that wasn't going to last forever. And in 1987 Acorn Computers launched the Archimedes, which at the time was the fastest microcomputer in the world. And I thought, oh, I've got to do something with this. And at that stage I had a Mac Plus and a LaserWriter 300 DPI printer. The Mac Plus was had a 9-inch monochrome screen. Anyway, I used it to start a magazine called Archive, hence the name of my business. So that magazine ran from 1987 to 2008, 20 years in my own control. The magazine's actually still going in someone else's control now. So I was the owner and editor of this magazine about the Archimedes computer. After the first few years I realized that some of the things I was doing in editing the magazine month after month were kind of mechanical, and I realized that I could perhaps use Global Find and Replace to do some of the editing. And my wife's just come home, hold on a sec. So you want to think of that, if you know Fredit, that's the sort of the basic idea of the Fredit macro. Around about 2005 the Acorn market was dying as Microsoft prospered, so I needed some way to earn a living once the magazine was diminishing, and so I joined the Society of Proofreaders and Editors and Proofreaders, SVEP, in the UK, and started doing proofreading and then later editing for other people, having done it for myself for 20 years. And I then started having to use Microsoft Word, which I'd never touched before, because to the Acorn fraternity Microsoft products were the sort of the devil incarnate. But I discovered that Microsoft Word had a programming language, Visual Basic, which allowed you to produce these things called macros, just computer programs called macros. So it was a bit like WordWise Plus on steroids, because it was much more powerful than the program I'd been using all those years ago. So I was able to start using simple programs to aid my editing, and I wanted to do the same thing, what we call scripted global find and replace. I wanted to do the same thing in Word. So I found a friend in the Acorn fraternity who was able to program in macros, and he created Pre-Edit, which is the forerunner to Fredit, and I began to use it within my editing work. And at the same time I started developing further programs, simple programs, to help with what I was doing. So if we summarize that, I could say that for since 2006 I've been writing and developing computer programs for editing, and I've been doing it full time, and so I've done rather a lot of it. So they're not complex programs, generally speaking, not rocket science, but they are tailored to an editor's needs, and that's very important when you're trying to develop programs for a given application. If they can be developed by somebody who actually does the work, who actually uses the programs, then you tend to get better programs as a result, even if the person in question is not the world's most competent programmer. So let's look at the significant stages there again. From 1982 I started writing simple programs for editing text, so that was 36 years ago. 1990, that's 28 years ago, I started using an Acorn program for scripted find and replace, and 12 years ago, 2006, I started writing macros for editing in Word. So that's a long pedigree of working in this general area of creating and using computer programs for editing. 36 years worth of that process, and you do develop quite a lot of ideas and skills even without being incredibly intelligent and competent in programming. So it does produce a massive resource of ideas and programs, and so that's put me in a very privileged position in 2018, and my deep and meaningful thinking where that's taken me. The last couple of years have been a time of change for me and my whole world view, and as I'm getting towards 70, I start to think, well, I'm not going to be around here forever. What am I going to do with my remaining time? What can I usefully do? How can I make use of the privileged position, and how can I best use what I've been given? So what have I got? I've got my current resource is well over 600 published macros, and a whole load more that are either written and waiting to be put into the book, or ideas to be developed. And we've got over 60 videos on YouTube. So I say it's a privileged position. I have been using and programming text-based tools for 36 years. I'm an obsessive problem solver. If someone says, would it be possible to do such and such, or I don't suppose it would be possible to do such and such, then that really gets me going. I've got a huge mental database of programming tools, just bits and pieces of programming, so that if someone wants a new macro writing, I can pull together a number of different ideas and quite quickly produce a new macro. I'm fortunate in that I've got enough money to live on. I've got pension money, which also means then I've got some disposable time. I do still need to do a bit of paid work, and also it's good to be actually doing the work when you're generating macros. Using and programming at the same time is really the best way to develop good tools. So how am I going to honour that privilege and make good use of it? How can this resource be made more accessible to people? And the answer for me, from my point of view, is teamwork. I need your help, please. I've got free time, but there's only one of me, and I've therefore only got a limited amount of time. And as I look at the macros that I've got, the problems are that, first of all, for many people, macros are really scary. They really aren't complicated, I don't think, but they certainly are scary, so getting people started is a bit of a problem, which is partly why I produced that last video, hoping that I'd be able to show people that they weren't as complicated and scary as I thought. There are too many of them. That's another major problem, in that if there are 600 and odd macros, how does anybody know which macros are of use to them? Okay, within the book I've tried to help with that. I've tried to give suggestions as to my favourite macros and all sorts of things like that, but it's still quite difficult for people to appreciate what's possible, because we all work in different ways, and therefore some macros are better for some people and others for others. And also the world's a big place. I can't be everywhere at once, so if there are people in different parts of the world wanting to get going on these macros, I have done a bit of travelling, and I have been invited to do more travelling, but there's only a limited amount that I can do, and it may not be the best way of getting the word out there for me to actually start travelling around the world and demonstrating macros. I think other people could do it better than I can. So what I think I need is good teachers and trainers all around the world to make use of the resources I've provided and put them into practice, or help other people to put them into practice in their own situations. So how might this work? Well, the idea I've got is that I could possibly help trainers to really get hold of macros, to really understand how they work, and get themselves going effectively and efficiently with macros, and then those trainers could train people in their own countries. I could perhaps do Skype sessions with 2 or 3 trainers who could get together in one country somewhere, and I can help you, and you can then build up courses and whatever you want using those macros. So am I aiming to take over the world of macroing? Sorry, the world of editing by my macros? Am I setting up a worldwide chain, a new franchise, although it's a franchise of free products? I'm training people to use Paul Beverley's macros. It all sounds a bit egocentric or whatever. But anyway, the offer is there. I'm willing to help in whatever way I can, and I certainly shan't take offence if you decline. I enjoy editing too much to worry about what response I get to this video. But that's it. That's the ideas, and over to you. See where we go from there. Thanks for watching.